Hello, parents. Welcome to the Masterful Parenting Podcast. I'm Anne Alvares, parent coach, school counselor, and mother of two. Do you sometimes struggle with your parenting role? Do you notice that sometimes you're repeating patterns that you learned in your own childhood? Maybe you are carrying childhood pain that has not been healed, and you notice that it is showing up in your parenting with your own children. Perhaps you yell or get frustrated easily. Maybe you are directing them or telling them what to do all the time, and you notice that your actions are affecting your relationship with your children. Well, parents, I totally understand this. I came from childhood pain and I learned how to be a relational parent with my children. And I can teach this to you as well. This podcast is all about learning how to heal the childhood pain that we are carrying so that we can foster healthy relationships with our kids. Join us every week for a new show, and we will dive into the healing and the fostering of healthy relationships with our children. Hello, parents. Welcome to the Masterful Parenting Podcast and YouTube channel. Today, I am doing a special webinar on the top unhealthy behaviors in our families. And the reason this is so important is because if you've come from childhood pain or trauma, then you know that what was role modeled to you as a child was not actually healthy. And then maybe you don't know what are healthy behaviors or what behaviors you grew up with are not healthy. And so I just want to do a deep dive into this topic of what is unhealthy actually in a dysfunctional home, a home that is not a healthy home. And maybe you grew up with some of them, some of these things. Maybe you grew up with only a few of these things. But when we know, when we're aware that that actually was not healthy, that's when we can change it with our children. Okay, so the top unhealthy behaviors in families that can actually cause emotional, psychological, and even physical harm to our kids. Number one is poor communication. I've met many parents who have a hard time having difficult conversations with their kids. And it's because they did not have these difficult conversations with their parents. And so they don't know how to have these kind of difficult conversations with their kids. And avoiding difficult conversations is actually not healthy. Sweeping it under the rug or pretending it never happened is actually not healthy. But when we talk openly about things, that's actually a healthy family. Yelling or using a harsh tone in your communication or passive aggressive behavior where you're ignoring and you're not responding and not listening or not validating their feelings or making fun of their feelings, saying, it doesn't matter. Why do you think that way? What's wrong with you? Okay? Those are all unhealthy things, unhealthy ways to communicate in our homes with our kids. All right, if you don't have any boundaries, that is unhealthy. When you're not respecting the privacy of your child, especially like teenagers. Teenagers, they don't want to change in front of their parents anymore. They need to have privacy when they're talking to their friends. They need their own personal space. So if you're not respecting that, or you were not respected as a teen, that is a lack of boundary. It's unhealthy. If you have very over controlling behavior, like your parents are constantly helicoptering, watching everything you do, don't leave you alone for a minute, or give you the impression that you can't figure out things yourself, always aiding you, helping you. And if you're doing that in your parenting, that's actually unhealthy. And emotional enmeshment, like emotional enmeshment is you are so attached to your child that you share everything with your child, like all your burdens, everything that's going on in your life. And then when they're not there, you feel lost, like you have nobody, right? Your whole existence is based on them. So that is actually really, really tough on a kid. So that's blurring the parent and child or sibling roles. Okay, so like if you're putting an older sibling in a situation where they're the parent, or if you're putting on a parent role onto your kids, right? This is an extreme example, but like getting them to pick up all the groceries for the family or putting undue responsibility on them. That is enmeshment. Okay. And that's also a lack of boundary because now it's very confused whose role is whose, right? Your child can help around the house, but should not be responsible for everybody. They should be responsible for their own things, but they shouldn't have to do everything for everybody. Okay, so that's a lack of boundary and it's unhealthy. And it causes resentment in our kids, actually. Okay, when you are constantly criticizing, when you have constant criticism or judgment, and maybe you grew up with it. I know I grew up with that criticism and judgment. And you focus on the flaws of the person instead of their strengths. Oh, they're always lazy. Oh, they're always on their phone. Oh, they don't do anything around the house. Okay, so you're focusing on all of these negative things and you're not seeing or focusing or verbalizing anything about the strengths of your child. Okay, so that's unhealthy. If you use sarcasm or belittling remarks like, oh, you should know better. How come you don't know this? Haven't I shown this to you so many times before? You know, when you talk that way, that's actually unhealthy. And when you're using guilt or shame as control tools, I know that that was used in my home growing up. My mom would make us feel guilty if we didn't do things for her. I do everything for you, she would say. I'm your mother. You should respect me. Uh, you know, you should know better. You're not being a good daughter. Those kinds of things. Those are actually not healthy, right? When you're using guilt or shame, it's actually manipulation. And manipulation is never good in a healthy home. All right, and number four is emotional neglect. Okay, so when you're ignoring or you're not caring about your child's emotional needs, like you let them cry it out. You punish and then you just let them cry and you don't indulge their feelings. You don't go over to give comfort. When you're failing to provide affection, like when you withhold affection because you're mad at your child, so I'm not going to hug them, I'm not going to kiss them. Withholding affection and withholding support is actually unhealthy. And when you're acting emotionally distant or cold, this happened a lot in my family. Where my mom would be very much, and she was mad at you. She wouldn't talk to you, or she would ignore you. Okay, so creating distance with our kids. This is emotional neglect, parents. And it causes our kids to feel very insecure in their relationship with us. Okay, so that's emotional neglect. Number five is favoritism. So if you favor one sibling, one child over another, and you show clear preference that the older one is better, smarter, more capable, more responsible. And if you use words like that too, oh, your older brother is more responsible. Um, why can't you be more like your older sister? Those kinds of things is showing favoritism. And we have to be so careful, parents. Our kids are different. They're not the same. So we should not be comparing at all. And we should not be comparing them to their classmates either or their friends. um, because that also causes an insecurity in them. Comparing siblings unfairly, when you're creating sibling rivalry through unequal treatment. So um, maybe older sister gets the biggest piece of steak or something, or gets first pick of the candies or something like that. When you are doing unequal treatment uh, to your children, that causes conflict and issues within a family, right? Because now they see their sibling as privileged and that they don't measure up. They're not worth as much um, in their family. So again, very, very damaging to a child's self-esteem, self-concept, and being a member of a family. They don't feel like they actually belong, right? Because why would I be treated differently? Or they would have resentment because of this unfair treatment. Okay, so favoritism is unhealthy. The obvious is abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, or verbal abuse. And so name calling or threatening and insulting is actually abuse. Physical harm, um, and fear-based discipline, like I'm going to give you a spanking if you don't stop, or I'm going to put you in a corner if you continue that behavior, or if you don't listen to me. A manipulative behavior and gaslighting. The gaslighting is minimizing what someone is saying and twisting their words around to make them like they're doing something wrong when they're actually not doing something wrong. Okay. That's really, really important to understand, parents, when we're not listening to our kids and we're turning it around like, well, you never did that. And last night you didn't do this. Changing the topic about something that they did long, long ago. Okay, I'm just going to share with you, parents, like, because I've been school counseling for over 17 years. Um, I have had students tell me that they will try to do better. They made a mistake, let's say in grade 4. Now they're in grade 8. But the parent will continuously bring up the mistake they made. Okay. Now that is so harmful because nobody can actually move through something that they did if the past is continuously brought up. So it is kind of a form of gaslighting because it's not relevant to today, and yet you still bring up things from the past, right? So it's really important that we're aware that we are doing that, because that they've made amends. They've done the duty to learn, and then you keep bringing it up, making them feel bad about themselves. Is not okay. It is unhealthy, and it is a form of abuse, emotional abuse. So we have to remember that. Okay. Number 7 of the top unhealthy behaviors in families is addiction and substance abuse. So if there is addiction in the family with the parents, alcohol, drug addiction, a gaming issue, it totally affects the family system. And when you enable the problem, as like maybe you're the healthy parent and then the other parent has the addiction, the alcoholism, or the gambling addiction or the drug addiction, and you're enabling it, you're letting it continue, you don't say anything about it, or maybe you're scared to say something about it, that causes a problem for the kids because now there's emotional instability due to the substance use or the addiction, because the addiction actually affects mood, right? So you can go on a high and then you can go on a deep down low or depression. So any kind of like mood fluctuations creates instability in our children because they don't know which parent they're going to get. They don't know if they're going to get the calm parent, the loving parent, or they're going to get the angry parent, the depressed parent, the parent that is irritable because they lost a lot of money at the casino. Like they don't know which parent they're going to get, and it causes instability and insecurity in our kids. So addiction and substance abuse is very, very unhealthy in families. Okay, number 8 is unrealistic expectations or perfectionism. Now, I work with a lot of parents that expect their kids to brush their teeth at a certain time. And if it's not done at a certain time, then they're angry, they're upset about it. Like, parents, we have to lighten up. Unrealistic expectation. They're kids. They're not bound by rules and regimen, and we're not running a military camp. We have to work with our kids to get them on a schedule, yes, but also be flexible, adaptable, and not punitive. So it's unrealistic to expect our kids to be perfect all the time. They will not be perfect all the time, and we will not be perfect all the time. And we're just setting them up for failure when we are expecting too much. Okay. And a kid that has unrealistic expectation could end up with anxiety, could end up with defiance, rebellion, right? Because it's too much. I can never amount to that. I'm not even going to try, right? That's what happens. Or if it's too much, they'll just stop going to school. You want me to get straight A's, my B's are not good enough. Well, I'm just going to give up. I'm not going to go to school. So we have to be careful that we are not expecting too much from our kids. We need expectations, but just not unrealistic expectations. We have to meet our kids where they're at. Um, when we don't give them praise, when we're withholding praise, um, unless they got the straight A's, unless they did all their homework, um, we withhold praise. We do not give them praise if they don't achieve what we think they should have achieved. And defining worth based on achievement only. Okay. When we become just very achievement driven, when we are always emphasizing the external things that they're doing, and then if they're not measuring up, then it causes a lot of problems. And also later in adult life, perfectionism can be very, very damaging in an adult's life. It can stifle their growth and their willingness to take risks because they're too afraid to fail. So we have to be really, really careful and mindful that we are not having unrealistic expectations or not expecting perfection from our children. All right, so that's number 8. Number 9 is conflict avoidance. So again, like I said, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about the issue, but maybe we just never talk about it or we just ignore it and we just sweep it under the rug, even though it's something that bothered us. Right? This is super common with parents of childhood pain. They will be offended by something that their child did, but they won't address it with their child. They won't say, "Oh, I didn't like it when you said that I was being overbearing," or "I didn't like it when you corrected me in front of your friends." Okay, they don't address it with their child, and then they sweep it under the rug, and then the child has no idea that he bothered mom. He did something that bothered mom, and he's figuring it out. He's like, "Okay, what did I do? What's happening? Why is mom upset?" Right? That is an issue when we do not talk openly and honestly with our children about how we feel, because there could be a misunderstanding. And also it's important for our kids to understand if they have hurt us and done things, that upset us. And we need to find out the why, right? Why did you say that? Right? Because it gives us a clue and it helps us to repair relationships. So sweeping things under the rug is not good. Avoiding accountability and not taking responsibility. So when we say, well, it wasn't my fault, your dad should have done this, or when we say, it wasn't my fault, my childhood was crappy, right? Like when we start letting our children know, well, I didn't know because I grew up this way, you know, it's avoiding accountability and it's bringing our kids into our chaos. It's bringing our kids into our trauma, right? I'm a firm believer in not sharing our trauma with our kids. Okay? I think that I just know from counseling that our kids care about us so much that anything that hurt us hurts them. And they don't need to know. What is the purpose of them knowing? We have to work on ourselves. We have to take responsibility to heal and to not repeat the patterns from our childhood that were unhealthy with our own kids. But our kids do not need to know the whole story of our childhoods. Now, when they're older, like when they're adults, you can talk about it with them. But when they're young, it's really, really difficult because they want to protect us instinctively and they care so much about us that they take on the emotional burden, even if it was from our past. So our kids, they feel our sadness, our depression, our irritability. They are so attached to us. So it doesn't even matter what we say, but how we present. And if we're feeling sorry for ourselves, then our children are going to take that message and they're going to feel bad and feel sad about us when we should really be parenting from a place of strength. Honestly, that's the best parenting. The best parenting is getting healed and parenting from a place of strength. And letting resentment build up over time. So, like, um, you go into your child's room, your child's room is messy, and then you just close the door, but it's bothering you. Then you wait weeks later again, you open the door, it's messy, it bothers you some more. And then over time, you're building up this resentment. Like I told my son, every day I remind him to clean and he's not cleaning. And now you're angry about it. Like what started out as small has become bigger because that's actually what happens when we repress our feelings, when we don't deal with how we're really feeling about things, then it gets bigger, our emotions about it. It gets bigger in our head. So that is bad. That is conflict avoidance when you should just deal with it as it's happening. Son, I notice your room is messy again. Remember I told you I asked you to clean it. I said ask because that's how you get compliance from your kids, asking them. Remember I asked you to clean up? So what's going on? How come you didn't clean it up yet? And then he can tell you. And then you can say, well, can you do better next time? What do you think? We're lightening it up, but we're still addressing the issue. Okay, that's healthier than this conflict avoidance, letting things stew inside only to blow up later on. All right. And number 10. Number 10 is lack of emotional safety. Wow. You know, I was teaching a class a couple days ago, and I talked about emotional safety in the classroom. My students were confused. They had no idea. They thought like, oh, and I used the word healthy. I said in a healthy environment, in a healthy classroom. And they were like, healthy? Isn't healthy like what you eat? And I said, no, you can have emotional health. You can have a, a place where you feel safe. That's being healthy. And so I had a light bulb moment that time. But I do think we should talk about it more and more that emotional safety, healthy homes means emotional safety. Everyone feels safe in the home. Okay. But if you don't have emotional safety, this is why. Because there's fear or judgment or rejection when you express your feelings. So you say, "Oh, I didn't like what happened in school today," and then somebody judges you. Well, that's stupid. Why would you feel that way? Right? That creates emotional unsafety because now you don't want to tell your parents because they judged you instead of listening to you and helped you through to process it, right? You didn't feel supported. So walking on eggshells around certain family members, like that your dad can get mad really easily and you don't know what's going to trigger him. So then you just be quiet and you don't say anything. You may feel that way with your spouse, like you're walking on eggshells because they get very irate about things. So it's not healthy. Nobody should be walking around eggshells uh, with anybody in the family. All of us, all of us need to feel safe that somebody isn't going to explode, yell at us, or get mad. So walking eggshells is not healthy. And also when you don't feel that there's a space for vulnerability or honesty. So um, that causes issues emotionally. I remember when I was young, I had a boyfriend that I was dating and we broke up. We broke up after 5 years. And my mom didn't like him. So she had no like emotional uh, empathy for my situation. And I didn't feel comfortable talking to her about it, actually. But what it would have meant to me for my mom to hug me, tell me it's okay, like, I know what you're going through, that would have meant so much. But I felt like my mom was really cold about it just because she didn't like the guy. And she didn't empathize or I didn't feel safe to actually tell her that it hurt me, that I was heartbroken. And that is not good. In a family, in a home, you should be able to say, I'm heartbroken. I'm so disappointed this happened. And your parents should be able to give you comfort instead of judging you or saying, I knew this was going to happen. He's no good. I told you he's no good. Because honestly, those words are not comforting and they do not help our kids. So we need to be able to be vulnerable with our parents and tell them our deepest fears, our deepest worries, and have our parents hear that and give support, right? Um, it's so difficult, I know, parents, when you come from childhood pain, to really truly express your emotions because you probably suppressed your emotions when you were a child. And I've been working with a mom who told me, like, even using the words that I tell her to use with her daughter, it's foreign to her because she's never heard it. These are not words that are, come naturally. And it's true. It's very, very true. It takes a while to learn this emotional language that connects our kids to us if we didn't grow up with it, right? If we were just told what to do and our parents never connected with us on an emotional level, then it's going to be a bit of a struggle or a retraining of the brain to learn how to communicate in a way that expresses emotion and allows our children to express their emotions and their vulnerability. So it does take practice, but it's so important in a healthy family. Everybody needs to be able to express how they feel. We're allowed to have bad days. We're allowed to be upset sometimes, right? And we can allow for emotions to be expressed in our homes and be okay with it, right? Try to be comfortable with it, even though you aren't comfortable because you didn't grow up with that. Try to be comfortable with it because you know expressing emotions is good, is a good thing. Okay, so those are the top 10 unhealthy behaviors in families. And those are the main ones that we have to really, really watch for, that we are not repeating those patterns with our kids. Because once we understand, once we recognize, oh, yeah, that's unhealthy, ignoring my child, or oh, yeah, that's unhealthy, I didn't hear or listen when my child was expressing emotion, you know, um, once we are aware, that's when we can do the flip, switch, switch the switch the switch, or and and move towards being healthy instead. And that's what I help parents with, is moving from unhealthy behavior to healthy behavior so that you can raise kids who are emotionally healthy, because they've come from homes that are emotionally healthy and safe. All right, parents, that is it for this topic, the top unhealthy behaviors. I'm going to do a part two, and I'm going to walk you through what are the healthy behaviors. How do we change this? How do we, what do we do instead? Instead of the unhealthy behavior, how do we replace it? The unhealthy behavior. How do we replace it and make it healthy for our homes? Okay, so I'll do a part two um, on behaviors, and this time we'll talk about what are the healthy behaviors. How do we turn this around when we've come from childhood pain? How do we start adopting healthy ways to communicate and to be with our kids? Thank you so much, parents. I hope that this helped you and blessed you. And if you got something out of this show today, I would love for you to do a Google review, uh, uh, a review on my podcast on Apple Podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel, um, anything that you can do to help promote masterful parenting to more and more parents. Thank you so much, parents, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Thank you, parents, for joining the show today. If this show blessed you, changed you, or helped you in any way, I would appreciate a Google review or a review on my podcast. And I would love you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Masterful Parenting, so we can get the word out to more parents about relational parenting. Thank you so much, parents, and we will see you next time. Take
Audio
care,
Jungle.
everybody.